The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily represent those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting group. Access Fort Wayne is a department of the Allen County Public Library. If you or anyone you know might be interested in making a television show, please call 260-421-1250.
Hi, Dr. Rudy Cashman. Welcome to the show today. I think it's be very interesting. If you feel like it doesn't apply to you, I'm certain that you have somebody that you're familiar with that you can help. It's about preventing breast cancer. Incidentally, males can have it too, maybe only 2 or 3%, but males have a breast. And they have some glandular tissue, and I'll speak about that. But obviously, females are the ones mostly exposed. The good news is that 50 to 70%, and maybe even higher, of breast cancer can be prevented. Yes. So I even wrote a book because I really researched the literature, read many books, some of which I'll hold up for you today. So I wrote a book called Breast Cancer Prevention is the Cure. Very easy to read, and I encourage you. You can get it on Amazon or at the library. It's up to you. But this is cancer, since it is preventable, sometimes stoppable, occasionally reversible. But prevention is much easier than any other things that I mentioned. And so how can we possibly prevent it? It's an untold secret. I don't think that we in the medical profession, the government, public health, congressmen have been telling people, because I think we've been dominated by the pharmaceutical industry, for example. But prevention in general is not a huge subject. Even the virus that's infecting us, if we get rid of our diabetes, it couldn't eat the sugar that diabetics have. And most people have not been informed of that. Whole countries have not been informed of that. So the wrong diet is the major driver of breast cancer, eating the wrong foods. A Dr. John Glaspy, Glaspy, UCLA, he's head of the Comprehensive Cancer Center, and that last statement I made comes from him. Well, the odds of getting breast cancer in this country, about 1 in 8, if you live to be age 90 or so, 1 in 8 chance that you will have had this disease, a significant number dying from it. And so prevention is huge. Asian people, maybe 1 in 40. Why is that? Well, the people from Western countries, which are eating different food than Asian countries, for example, or the people in Alaska, for example, years ago, we're speaking about, not presently, an Asian female, 1 in 40, us 1 in 8. So we are diagnosing it when we already have it. All these screening tests you read about, mammograms and CTs and PET scans and self-examination, all those are very important. They're all very important. But when they're useful, when we already have it. I'm speaking about getting rid of it so it never grows in your body, and you will have the knowledge. Time I get done today, and this is, I think, a good thing. So drugs are powerful, but they are not as powerful as the food that you eat. And I'll explain that to you. A Dr. Cummings, who is the most famous obesity doctor in the world in Cambridge University in England, is that diet would prevent 80% of breast cancer. Just think of it. In our country, we have over 40,000 deaths a year from breast cancer. Over 200,000 get it, but over 40,000 die from it. Just in this country alone, that's a huge number. The suffering these women went through psychologically and physically in their families, and some of them are young. And good news is, you must gather some information. This is what you're doing. I'm about information today, so I do want you to read some of these books. Some of these others I will hold up. And Dr. Dean Ornish, who's well known, speaks a lot about nutrition. Says just like heart disease can be stopped by eating the right foods, well, and he recommends a nutritarian type way of eating. It also stops breast cancer. Okay, so breast cancer drugs have some influence, no question about it. Tamoxifen, you hear about, for example, and some other drugs. They have some value, but they're not as strong as nutrition. And estrogen plays a big part in here, but it's difficult to pin it down 100% because the pharmaceutical industry is selling medication and drugs, and how much is that push by the pharmaceutical industry, how much that is based on science versus nutrition, for example. And the breast cancer rate in this country has been increasing about 1% a year. More people are living because our treatments and have been somewhat better. And the Sloan Kettering Institute in New York, Cancer Institute, endorses teaching nutrition and also medication. And there are a number of medications, and you need to gain information if you want to take those once you have it. But again, I'm about prevention, okay? And food is kinder to your body than drugs. Drugs have side effects. They all have side effects. Some more than others. Some, the list is so long, you have to read 30 pages of it, okay? So the energy in our body, what feeds the energy, the type of food that we're eating. So where do we get it from? From sugar, okay? And also from ketones, which I'll speak about more later. Ketones also provide energy. Your brain can run on ketones. The rest of your body can run on ketones. So you need to learn something about both of them. So to find out yourself, what's my HbA1c, what's my sugar level? I also suggest that you get your insulin level, because the insulin level pushes sugar into the cell. And that is elevated 10 to 15 years before your sugar goes up. So so you could be, your insulin could be pushing sugar into the cells a long time, and this is feeding your cancer. So you need to know if you can get rid of your path to diabetes, your rate of cancer will go down. Will go way down. So that is very important. And estrogen does play a part, because the tumors are found in people who have higher estrogen levels. And one way would be if a child will start menstruating, say, at age 8, and menopause is much further out, the length of time that person is exposed to estrogen, the breast cancer rate goes up. They even studied a group of nuns who, of course, did not have a baby, so that they don't stop menstruating because they're pregnant, so they're exposed to estrogen many more years. 300 years ago, they studied them and found out they had high breast cancer rates. They also studied people up north in Alaska and further north in these ancient tribes, and found out they had very low cancer rates because they didn't eat sugar. They ate fat, good fats. They ate the blubber from the fish they were catching, and their cancer rates were low. So we realized there that indeed sugar has something to do with it, because if your sugar goes up, the insulin goes up. Mm-hmm. You're eating good fats, your insulin does not go up. So insulin causes cancer cells to grow and divide and to multiply right from the beginning, right at the mitochondria, the factories that are in every one of our cells that have the energy metabolism in them. Right in the beginning, what lights the fire? What lights the fire? I think it's insulin. I don't think it's estrogen. Estrogen does cause division and growth of cancer cells, but it's further down the line. So to find out what your serum insulin is, I think is very, very important. But your estrogen level, before menopause and after menopause, the estrogen level goes down. So what makes breast cancer grow? Many factors have to be added, but we spoke about it already, the type of food that you're eating, estrogen level itself. So cancer development is in a few stages, but one of which the initiation. What's the original thing that starts at the mitochondria, provide the energy for a cell? Okay, what is a change in the genes? What ignites that exposure to X-rays, for example, whether you're smoking, for example, consuming a lot of alcohol, all can cause a genetic change. And you add on top of that a poor diet with high insulin levels. Insulin makes tumors grow. Remember, we said that already. And so breast cancers are hormonally driven. We know that from the estrogen, but insulin's a hormone, so it makes it grow. And estrogen has many effects in our body, though. It affects many parts of our body, including neurotransmission, sexual characteristic, enlarged breast, the vagina, the uterus. It all affected by estrogen affects about 300 different things in your body. So it's like tamoxifen, which is a drug we give because it occupies the estrogen receptors, and estrogen can't do its harmful work when you use tamoxifen. But tamoxifen, a cancer drug, for example, does good things and bad things. So it's not that clear. Drugs may be a partial answer, but the most important answer, type of food that you're in. And there are many different types of estrogen. Like the one after menopause is called estradiol. It's much stronger. And but if estrogen was the only problem, then in menopause, the estrogen level goes down, and now you have a different estrogen. But 80% of breast cancer occurs past age 50. So is it just the estradiol that's doing that, or is estrogen all along? I don't think it's totally clear. And so it's there are 300 places that estrogen works in your body. So let's review the anatomy of the breast a little bit. And milk is formed in little sacs in the breast. There's millions of little sacs, and they are drained about 10 to 15 tubes, okay? And then they go to the nipple. Those tubes have on them, don't have their own covering. They have what's called epithelium. That's also what covers the sacs that collect the milk. Okay, you're talking about sacs that are further out on the breast. And they have epithelium that collects the milk made by the millions of little glands that make it. It drains through these tubes to the nipple. And the insulin and the estrogen have receptors on these tubes. Mm-hmm. And that's how these drugs work. They provide their effect. So if we can reduce the receptors or have something else to sit on the receptor, it's less likely to cause you harm. Like tamoxifen will sit on top of the estrogen receptor, and if you get rid of your diabetes, for example, which probably 90% of the people have, 90%. We all think, 50% are diabetic. No, it's 90. The other 40% were never properly tested with serum insulins, so we don't know they have it. So if you're going to say, I don't have diabetes, my blood sugar is normal, means nothing to me. I want to know your serum insulin. Okay, fasting, 1 hour, 2 hour. If that's normal, I say you're not diabetic. And people who are thin can actually develop breast cancer, although if you're thin, you see fat has a lot of estrogen in it. So if I'm thin, I don't have increased estrogen level because I'm thin. Actually, there are people who are thin who have elevated estrogen levels, who have elevated insulin levels. Get your blood work done. You are what your blood work is, okay? So if you're way overweight, your estrogen level likely is elevated. And some people have a higher level than others. So being overweight are much more likely to get breast cancer. But remember what I said, there are also thin people who have elevated insulin level and are pre-diabetic or diabetic. To me, pre and diabetic is all the same thing. So they need to get tested too. If you have your ovaries removed, breast cancer rates go way down. But in the end, actually, they think things turn out about the same because of other effects, because you no longer have your hormones, your progesterone and your estrogen. So it's not always very clear. The prolonged exposure to estrogen, remember I said, increases the breast cancer rates. So early start of menstruation and late menopause increase the breast cancer rates, okay? If you menstruate under age 14, you have a 30% increase in breast cancer. So again, is that what's the reason for that? And a lot of times the reason for that is your child's a diabetic. You just don't know it. Your pediatrician didn't check it. Get a blood sugar and a serum insulin, you may find out it's a type 2 diabetic. You correct that, and you will affect other hormones. What initiates the cancer? What's the initiation? It's oxidative load. In other words, the amount of sugar in your body, that's oxidative load. So, and that forms free radicals where electrons in your molecules need to be paired. And if they're not paired, you have free radicals, and they can be damaging to your body. That could be the initiator. That could be the spark that starts the cancer. That's the reason I say to eat properly, exercise properly, not to smoke, not to consume alcohol, avoid toxins, is the way to keep a healthy body. But how can foods prevent breast cancer? Chemo prevention is one way. Breast cancer itself could take many years to form. In other words, it would take a long time for you to have a disease you don't know about, like the path to diabetes. You may not know you got it if you were never properly tested. They have done autopsies on people that have died and found out 39% of the people who died, who were not it was totally unknown, had breast cancer. They had abnormal cells. If they lived long enough, they would have had it. So this is a long-term thing, and there's a certain stage you read, and all of a sudden it explodes, and you get a lump, and something is occurring. See, we are screening people, but to have an effect, to feel something or see something on an X-ray takes about 1 billion cells. So when you're screening people, really, is that preventative? We're catching you with cancer already, and things are tougher once you have cancer. And it takes about 1 billion cells before we can detect it on a test. Okay? And so food affects the path to breast cancer a lot earlier, at the very beginning stage, the mitochondria. What are the mitochondria, which are the energy factories in every cell in your body? What are they eating? Are they eating a lot of sugar and the insulin levels up? Remember I said insulin is carcinogenic. It just doesn't push sugar into the cell. It also multiplies cells as carcinogenic. So we're talking about the very beginning, the spark, the inflammation, which then promotes it. Insulin inflames the whole body, and once the spark has been lit, inflammation occurs. We could be on the path to breast cancer. So if we give chemotherapy, we disrupt the hormonal pathways that cause cancer, so it can be of value. Repair the genetic material. Remember, it takes damaged genetic. That's the very beginning of a cancer, is damage to your genes. Incidentally, only about 5% of breast cancer is genetic, inherited, only about 5%. And I'll discuss that in more detail in a little bit. So chemotherapy inactivates enzymes that drive chemical reactions and lowers the oxidation levels also in your body. So it has some value. Good food and good nutrition slows down the estrogen production. A good way, really, to prevent cancer is to eat a way of good fats, not sugar. For 50 years, we told people, and Ancel Keys, a well-known person, had something to do with it. We told people fat was bad. So what did we use for energy instead? Sugar. That has promoted this huge breakout of increased cancer, increased diabetes. So to follow, if you maybe have heard of it, KETO, a keto way of eating is and I teach that too, eat about 50-70% good fats, 20% proteins, 15% fruits and vegetables, which are important because they have in them vitamins and phytochemicals, which replace ones you may not have and help prevent cancer and help the chemo drugs to work and maybe save your life. So that's very important. But eating good fats is important. There's a very good book which I'd like you to read. Remember, I'm about information, okay? Simply Keto by Susan Ryan. An excellent book. She speaks about the good fats. I would get this, use this as a reference. I think it's very important. If you can't afford it, go to the library. Otherwise, Amazon, get this. Because the reason being is you'll not only prevent breast cancer, but you'll get rid of type 2 diabetes, which you may be on the path to. You may be undiagnosed. Type 2 diabetes, it causes 30 diseases: dementia, heart attacks, strokes, amputations, dislocations, blindness, hearing trouble. I can go on and on. You'll prevent all those diseases and avoid the path to breast cancer. Simply Keto, Susan Ryan. An excellent book. And you may not be overweight. Remember, I said thin people can have this problem too. But she used to weigh 289 pounds. Now she's 180. Looks beautiful. But she has recipes and there are pictures of them. It's a wonderful book. So food slows down estrogen production, the right food, okay? Remember we talked about keto. Now, if you eat the keto way, if you're eating good fats, then and not sugar, then the sugar level goes down and the insulin level goes down. Remember, insulin's a cancer producer, makes cancer cells grow. Fat cells open up, fat comes out, goes to the blood, is picked up by albumin, a protein brought to the liver, turns into ketone. Ketones are energy dense. They can run your brain. It's not just sugar that runs your brain. Ketones can run your brain, okay? And the heart, the liver, the kidneys, the pancreas, they all can run in ketones. As a matter of fact, they make you more energetic, make you feel better, less depressed, and lead to good health. So I want you to learn something about ketones. You may have heard this and that. Be open-minded, gain some information. It's an excellent way. I teach it all the time. Okay? And as I mentioned, alcohol leads to increased rates of cancer and diabetes. Cigarette smoking also. So these are habits you need to get over. And you can block the estrogen receptor on every cell we have receptors. And we can block it with tamoxifen and a number of other drugs. But remember what I said about estrogen. It makes tumor cells grow. But is it the original cause? I'm not so sure about. I think it's insulin growth factor that really is the main cause. I gave a talk once on pancreatic cancer. And when you got to the bottom line, when you got to the last cell, the original cell that caused pancreatic cancer, I found a paper said it was insulin. I wonder about breast cancer, the same. Estrogen is not the original cause of it. It increased because it grows a lot faster. But again, this is open to discussion. I'm just giving you my opinion, which is well read. And so block the trigger. Block the trigger. What's a trigger that starts this process? To me, it's sugar and the insulin. So eat a combination of foods that decrease oxidation, which would be a low sugar diet, and a large amount of antioxidant type foods, increase fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables have in them phytochemicals of vitamins and minerals that replace what you may be short of, because it's this lack of vitamins, minerals that may be the original gun that set off the genetic change towards cancer. Yeah, that's a probability. So change the fats, go to good fats. Things written about proper eating. 50 years we told people fat is bad for you. No. Good fats are good for you. Susan Ryan's book explains that very carefully, because if you're eating good fats, your blood sugar is very stable. It's not high, and it's not forming cancer. It's not causing brain disease. Most of Alzheimer's disease is due to insulin, which is raised because you're eating too much sugar. Most people don't know that. Most Alzheimer's disease could be prevented. Yeah, very important. So if you eat this way, it's not just less rates of cancer, it's less rates of diabetes and the 30 chronic diseases it causes. It was a wonderful opportunity. So there are good fats, they're called omega-3 fats, based on the number of bonds between the chemicals. Okay, the bad fats are omega-6 fats. Most of the Western nations are eating like 20 to 1 bad fat to good fat. You want about 2 to 1, 1 to 1. And that's the reason the Western countries are the ones who have the most breast cancer. And other bad fats to avoid too would be cottonseed, or the oils, polyunsaturated fats. They increase breast cancer like 69%. Yeah. So know what you're consuming. Omega-9 fats, like olive oil, are good fats. Strong protective effect. Okay? And they did a study, a couple of scientists went among the Eskimos, and they found out they were eating a lot of omega-3 fats from the fish. Remember I told you about that? Very little sugar, and their breast cancer rate was way down. Their diabetic rate was way down. They were very healthy, okay? And there are a few good estrogens. Remember I said there's many different kinds of estrogens. Only one vegetable interferes very clearly with the estrogen pathway, so it avoids estrogens, okay? Cruciferous vegetables, that are vegetables where the flowers look like a cross. Broccoli, cauliflower, for example, and onions, mushrooms. The best anti-breast cancer foods really are mushrooms with some onion on top. A woman should eat one every day. That's a big preventer of breast cancer. That's been well studied. Dr. Joel Fuhrman, the well-known prevention doctor, he speaks about that quite a bit. And these cruciferous vegetables have in them indoles, which are healthy for you. So let me give you some further examples of vegetables, cruciferous vegetables that contain 3-carbinol, which are very healthy. Okay, bittercress, bok choy, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, collard, kale, and we always spoke about the onions and the mushrooms are very healthy. You know a good way to get them? Make a smoothie. Put them in a Vitamix machine that breaks up all the cell membranes, releases all the phytochemicals and the phytonutrients. And I have a smoothie every day, and I've probably done it now for 10 years. Yeah, you can get all the vitamins, the minerals, and the phytochemicals because the cell membranes that keep them in place are broken up by the Vitamix machine. And it's usually most smoothies, if you put in these healthy things, are low caloric. I have one every day, along with maybe a cup of eggs and bacon. Remember, that's keto. That's essentially keto. It's largely good fats, some protein, and my smoothie is the necessary phytonutrients, vitamins, and minerals, which are not very caloric because they have a lot of fiber in them, and fiber avoids the absorption of a lot of calories, but the phytonutrients sneak into the bloodstream. There's a big one for you. There's a big one for you. Okay. So these are superstars. They lower the insulin level. You don't want to be juicing. If you're juicing, that's high sugar. You want the fiber in the smoothie because then your blood sugar won't shoot up after you have your smoothie. And the reason we're so concerned about the insulin level is because it's elevated because of what we're eating, and it's much higher in people who are overweight, whose estrogen level is already elevated. Now, the insulin level is elevated because they're diabetic. That's being carcinogenic. But remember, the thin people can have this problem too. So there are quite a few insulin receptors in the breast tissue, and there are estrogen receptors in them, but there are many more insulin receptors than estrogen receptors. So they cause the cancer cells to grow and divide. Remember, the initiator, to me, is the sugar in the insulin. So blood tests are critical. I don't care if you're thin, get tests anyway. Stop the glucose load. Don't eat so much sugar. Eat the good fats. Eat the keto way, and it's easy. And you can get rid of type 2 diabetes 6 weeks. I've done it many times to people. Complex carbs can be high sugar, so you gotta be careful what you're eating here. And so determine the glucose content of what you're eating. I spoke to someone on the phone, that I knew in Bengal. She got on the phone, her husband from Thailand, and she hadn't seen him in 2 years because of the virus epidemic. But no one there, just like in this country, no one told them that diabetics have a lot of sugar in their cells, and the virus is a non-living thing, so it needs to steal the food for energy. And you know what it used about a virus like the Corona-19? You know what it uses? Sugar. That man did not know. The country, the leaders did not tell him. And what do they eat? What do they eat 3 times a day? Rice. That's sugar. White rice may be, I think, glycemic index 1 to 100. The higher the number, the higher the sugar. White rice may be 90. And they say, oh, I eat black rice, brown rice. That's 82 maybe. Yeah. Rice is off the schedule. You're just feeding the viruses and your diabetes. So I'm going to send him some materials. I don't know if the newspapers will pick up on it. They didn't in this country. So I doubt that they'll do it there. Why? I don't know. Cognitive dissonance, perhaps. And insulin also has an insulin growth factor. It makes things grow and divide much quicker. You see my point? Why I think it's a big problem with cancer. So avoid foods with high GI glycemic index foods. Learn. And what are high glycemic foods? I already mentioned potatoes and raisins and rye and bread and sucrose and pineapple and croissants and Mars bars, soft drinks. 50% of drinks are full of sugar just by different names, so you won't realize it. The list, French fries, the list goes on and on. So pay attention to what you're eating. Let me tell you an interesting thing in passing here. When Ronald Reagan, one of our former presidents, got shot, there was a picture. I have it at home. of a beautiful Mrs. Reagan and a bodyguard, and putting her in the car after he got shot, and she had this big jar in front of her like this. I have that picture. It was full of jelly beans, and he eventually, developed severe dementia. What do you think? What do you think? Diabetic. Remember, I said dementia can be caused by diabetes. I have that picture at home. I just mentioned it in passing because it could be a big learning point. So eat high fiber foods. They may go to the colon, not get broken up, and you won't absorb the sugar, but you don't know. And peaches are full of fiber, so that's a good fruit to eat. Incidentally, my daughter sent me a whole case of peaches from Augusta, Georgia, and I've almost eaten every one of them. God, they're delicious. But I'll tell you one thing, I'm eating one a day, full of fiber. So that's true. So peaches got to be a pretty good thing to eat. So got to be a low oxidative load, actually. So fruits and vegetables have some protective effect. But remember, I said not too much because they do have sugar in them. But they have in it the vitamins, the minerals, the phytochemicals that lack of, which may have helped cause the genetic change, help form the cancer. So you want to replace them. A smoothie would probably do it. A smoothie probably would do it. So to know the nutrient density of the food you're eating, they even have now ORAC scores, ORAC scores, that tells you the nutrient density of food. But you don't want to be eating 80% nutrient-dense food because you'll be getting a lot of sugar. Remember I said keto, high fat, 20% protein, 15% nutrient-dense with high ORAC score. So to read her book will tell you much more about it. And try to avoid the chemical estrogen if you can by eating that plant-based diet, lean meats, low-risk food. And and try to get your body down to a normal weight if you can, because fat has ended estrogen and it's inflammatory and is playing a part in breast cancer, but maybe not as large as we are led to believe. And limit your alcohol because it's in it acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde is what promotes the cancer. And vitamin D is healing, and that's the one. I don't recommend supplements majority of the time, but take some vitamin D if you don't have any sun exposure. At least check your level on your blood test. Okay? So remember this book I have here, Breast Cancer Prevention is the Cure. You want to prevent it. Once you have it, to say you're cured, it could be tough. You want to prevent it, but you can prevent 90% of it. And it's the most common cancer worldwide for women, yes. So about 2 million worldwide. U.S. has greater than 200,000 cases. It's going up. 40,000 deaths. It's more than that now. It's much higher in Western nations because they eat a poor diet. The death rate's been slightly better because we've improved the treatment. People are living longer, but they're still dying. Age makes a difference. 80% of the deaths have occurred at age 50. All aging things, death rates increase. Is that part of that? Is it the length of time and exposure to estrogen? Is it the length of time exposure to diabetes and insulin, which is more likely? And the death rates is different in different races. Caucasian, 127 per 100,000 in a lifetime, okay? African Americans, 119 in 100,000. Asians, further down. Native Americans, 77.9. Personally, I don't believe it because they have much higher rates of diabetes than any of us because we've been giving them the wrong food, not providing the information. So I don't tend to believe that figure. But 80% of the breast cancers occur after age 50. 50, they can run tests now to see if a tumor is estrogen sensitive, and 50% estrogen sensitive, but how you deal with premenopause where the estrogen is up and after menopause the estrogen is down, but the breast cancer rate, 80% die past age 50. How do you explain that? Give me a phone call. That's difficult. And I noticed when they mentioned the magic 5, the most preventative, avoid increased insulin, that means the sugar, lack of exercise, diabetes, thin or overweight. If you drink, they used to say 2 or 3 drinks a week's okay. Now they're saying no drinks are good in terms of prevention. And stop smoking. Top 5. I noticed they didn't mention estrogen at all. And stress affects breast cancer. And how does it do that? Because you use sugar to feel better. It's an addiction. We're addicted to sugar. We all are. If I go home tonight, in spite of good health habits, all my lab tests were negative. I'm, 39 for the 46th time a few months ago. All my tests were normal, just to show you I practice, what I teach. Let's talk a minute about hereditary breast cancer. That's only about 5%. Yeah, you hear a lot about the BRCA gene. 1 and 2 of that 5% is hereditary. Only half of that 5% is the BRCA gene. It's something that you inherited. And you can detect it by genetic testing, but that test is expensive. So I don't necessarily think that everyone should be screened for the BRCA gene, but if you have a lot of breast cancer deaths in your family, definitely get screened. I think it's important. Multiple breast cancers in the family doesn't necessarily mean that it's genetic. Could be they're all eating the same way, just like I was at a Tabanaki table looking across, about 10 people sitting there eating, and they all look the same, from babies to adults. They're all eating rice, the same food. Probably all are diabetic. So is that genetic? No. They're eating all the food. So some of this can run in a family without any genetic involvement. They're just eating the same food. Maybe it's rice or whatever. May have a similar lifestyle, for example. Okay, so but if it runs in every generation, though, it's more likely to be genetic. We can modify 95% of our genes by lifestyle, and the reason being it's called epigenetics. When we are born, we have only written the script. You won't believe this. I mean, this is research coming out, but I'm quite familiar with it. We have written only maybe 5% of our genetic script. If we took our DNA and unfolded it, it's a bunch of numbers, it would reach to the moon. To the moon, that's how long it is, okay? We've only written about 5% of it. So what the mother and father, what they were eating, what they were drinking, whether they were smoking, and with the mother, whether she was exercising, how she was eating, how she was thinking, effect, whether she was listening to music. Remember the Mozart effect on Mozart as a baby. He was born that way because the parents did nothing but, there was nothing but music in the house. But we can write the genetic script of the infant here, epigenetics. Our chromosomes at the end have telomeres, okay? And we can write their script on there so when they are born, they we already can predict whether they're going to be diabetic, they're going to be overweight, or if they're going to be exercises because of what their parents or even their grandparents did. It's called epigenetic. We're writing the genetic script by our lifestyle on our baby that's going to be born. But if it runs in every generation, it's more likely to be a genetic thing. But it's only 5-10%. The rest is dependent on the chromosomes, the script which are writing by our lifestyle, what we do, whether we exercise, whether we smoke, or whether we drink, type of food that we're interested in. I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, it's good and it's bad, but it gives us an opportunity to avoid most of these illnesses. So the BRCA gene, BRCA gene 1 and 2, 2 or 3%, that's about it. These people have a high propensity towards breast cancer, but it's not necessarily expressed. We can affect it. For example, by some might have the ovaries removed. For example, breast cancer rates go down 40%. Or by watching what we're eating. But otherwise, by age 80 or so, 80% will have breast cancer. So it does have an effect. But you can affect the gene expression by your diet and exercise and alcohol and smoking and type of food you're eating. So then there are a couple other genes which, like HER2, is not inherited, but it's an oncogene. It turns a breast cancer on. Again, it's by what you do, what you were doing. So you're not stuck just with your gene, okay? But about 50% will get breast cancer if they don't follow some precautions. So lifestyle could prevent 50% or so of breast cancer, but most women don't know that. So I'm trying to stimulate you to get the knowledge. There's another book, much more detailed, which I'm just trying to stimulate you to gain some knowledge. There's a Mayo Clinic breast cancer book in great detail. Even decisions that you make, whether you want to get gene tested, I encourage you to read this. But if you do that and you read my book and Simply Keto, you've gone a long way. But at home, laying on my floor for the last week or so, I have 10 other books, okay? So you can be like, don't all be like me, 1,500 books in my basement, okay? But since I'm doing the show, I like to gather knowledge. I sort of summarize it for you. So genetic testing is expensive, but some people need it. There's a lot of breast cancer in your family, and you feel you need the motivation to know what your odds are, get some genetic testing. The other way to look at it too, though, is just to simply eat keto and forget about your genes. Just that way you get rid of diabetes, all the diseases. You probably won't get breast cancer. Might be the best way, okay? And remember, screening does not cure breast cancer. It detects it, okay? And about 50% can be avoided by proper lifestyle, okay? And don't have your breasts removed just because you have a little bit of knowledge. That's discussed in detail in the Mayo Clinic book, and seek other opinions. Is that even if there's a high genetic probability, but again, it's maybe 2.5% genetic, and the rest is lifestyle, and you'd have both your breasts removed. I don't know. It's a decision. It's up to you. But gain a bunch of knowledge, okay? Gain a bunch of knowledge. And 75% of uterine cancer is caused by being overweight. I had a recent local oncologist confirmed that to me. I was riding with her in the elevator, and I asked about it. Yeah, because I read it in these books. 75% of cancer uterus is due to weight. Okay, so women are at increased risk, and so. As we already mentioned, so our DNA is the basis of life. DNA has a script written on it as to what we look like, how our organs work. Everything that occurs in our body is written on this script, but you can alter it. Remember, over 90% of it is empty, so your habits can have tremendous effect. And on it, each strand has on it about 2.8 billion messages, but most of it's blank. Yeah, wonderful opportunity. And known messages occupy only 2% of that script to the moon. And so our fingers, our forks, and our feet write the script. And I wanted to play pickleball this morning, but it was raining. But I'm tap dancing tomorrow. When I walk in nature, maybe as soon as it stops raining, I'll be singing songs and speaking to the birds, and they'll be speaking back. I'm writing my script, okay? And the script is written really in different letters, A, T, C, and G, only 4 of them, but the alternatives, you can take those and alter them, but again, they're doing what you do. Otto Warburg, I want to mention this name here before I finish this program. In 1936, thought that the genetic script in cancer is determined by what you're eating. He found that it takes 12 molecules of sugar to fulfill the energy requirement of a cancer cell. So cancer is a sugar feeder. And in his research so many years ago, 1920 something, in Germany, then the war occurred, and those things happened, but then they developed the genetic theory of cancer, that it was just your genes. Well, they're changing their mind again because they discovered the helix in 54, Watson and Crick, and find out it takes 100 different drugs. Vera Bradley takes all the money that they collect in Fort Wayne and send to Indianapolis for genetic research. That's only 2.5 to 5% of the cause of breast cancer. Breast cancer is caused by what we're eating 95% of the time. Please keep some of the money in town and teach the people how to be healthy, and we get rid of diabetes and breast cancer at the same time. So what am I saying? Is that nutrition really is the biggest influencer of whether we get breast cancer or not. Estrogen has something to do with it, but the biggest thing is what we're eating. And if you were to eat properly and maybe follow the Simple Keto book here, or look at my websites, or give me a call. I see people for free the majority of the time. Occasionally I have lunch with them at the Divine Cafe, and people can interview me, and I'll teach them personally while we're having lunch is another way. And because I care about you. This is a preventable thing. We can prevent 30 diseases from diabetes. We can prevent breast cancer. That's a lot better than once you get screened. But once you're screened and they find it, you feel a lump, or self-examine your breast, which is very important. But then we have to deal with the cancer itself and things that are a little more serious. Although way of eating I recommend, the keto way, actually is an excellent way for people to prevent, stop, reverse cancer. So I want you to learn a lot about keto. So there's hope. I send you today a message of hope for stopping, preventing, reversing the path to cancer, to diabetes. So breast cancer prevention really is huge, and you must participate and read about this, and not just keep on eating a bad diet or seriously overweight. But remember, thin people can get diabetes, that you do something about it and live to be 100 if tap dance with me. Thanks for watching this show. And this will be on YouTube in about 2 weeks or so. Because this is a complex issue. And I encourage you to get these books and read them. See me in person if you feel like I'm on the path and I need some help. I need to speak to somebody to change our habits. It's not easy for any of us, okay? For anyone, because nature designed it for us to seek sugar to stay alive, okay? But sugar is the booger and the hooker. And to eat good food and that good fats are the secret of life, really. 50 years, our government, doctors, whatever, we all told you to avoid fat. That was wrong. That was wrong. And I think it was promoted by industry, pharmaceutical companies. We doctors, too. The government. But that's in the past. Let's not look back. Let's look forward. And if you do what I ask you to do, and maybe read my breast cancer prevention book as a start, and then switch to the Simply Keto Way, and you'll be on your way. And meet me when you're 100 for a pickleball match, or tap dance, or just to say hello. I did this today because I love you, I care about you, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.